Hey, what's up, you guys? It's Matt. Today I'm here to talk about The Tyrant Cormorant, which is my favorite book of the year so far, and I truly don't really see anything topping it. I absolutely loved this book, and I'm going to tell you why. So, The Tyrant Cormorant is the sequel to The Traitor and the Monster Cormorant by Seth Dickinson. After reading this one, I called the title of Monster, I called the title of Tyrant, and so I think the final book is going to be the Savior Cormorant. Just note that for when the fourth book comes out. This series is probably one of the most intelligent series I've ever read. I really can't think of like that many series that say so much and have such amazing themes and commentary on the way the world is. Examples I can think of are the Melisande books, obviously. Guy Gabriel Kay, but he's kind of in a different way. Also, N.K. Jemisin, her Broken Earth trilogy. It's kind of like that vibe, but I would put this on par with, or just maybe slightly under Stephen Erickson in terms of the thematic, like, punch to the face that you get in the series. This series follows the story of Beru Cormorant. She is a young girl from the island nation of Tyrant. The people of Tyrant, they are primitive, savage. They have a very simplistic and kind of idyllic lifestyle. They bargain for everything. They don't have any actual like currency and whatnot. And then suddenly one day in the beginning of book one, some people show up on their shores in massive boats. And these people are from the Empire of Falcrest, also known as the Masquerade. And they set up a trading little shop with Tyrant and slowly and insidiously worm their way into the society by introducing fiat notes until suddenly you can't do anything on the island without using Falcresti currency. Falcrest kind of become the de facto rulers of Tyrant in a sense. And Beru starts going to a Falcresti school to get an education, and she learns that she is a savant. And a lesbian, actually. We'll get to that later. But Beru learns that she's a savant, but she doesn't quite agree with the values of the Empire. The Empire believes in this thing called encrasticism, and it's just a whole set of beliefs, a word, something Dickinson made up, I suppose. But they believe in like eugenics, racial hygiene. They're homophobic, transphobic, racist. I don't know. They just have a lot of. I can't think of the other things, but they just have a lot of beliefs that aren't quite great, I guess you could say. You have to apply to have a child. If you get pregnant, they'll abort the baby. If it's not approved, they lobotomize people all the time. They lobotomize the criminals to just kind of get them out of the way and whatnot. And so Beru, she really disagrees with the Falcresti Empire and she wants to take it down. But Beru, even as a young girl, is smart enough to know that there's no way that she can take down Falcrest from anywhere, but from within the Empire and at the very top. And so Beru's mission from that point on is to climb as high as she can in the ranks of Falcrest, since it is a meritocracy. She wants to climb to the very pinnacle of power and then bring it all crashing down and decolonize all the places that the Masquerade now owns. She wants to stymie their plans for expansion, all of that. This series is just so awesome because of all the things that it has to say about kind of ethics and power and how you have to sacrifice the former to gain the latter. Beru, she, in exchange for power, is selling her soul piece by piece by piece until she can't even really recognize herself anymore. She can't identify with the person she used to be, with where she used to come from. And the worst part about it all is she can never stop, because if she stops now, all of the previous sacrifices she's made, all of the people who have died, all of the opportunities she's given up, that will have been for nothing. And so she uses all of the deaths of her past in order to justify all of the deaths of the future that she's going to cause. It's a really interesting series because Beru is kind of an anti-hero. Actually, she's very much an anti-hero, but there's kind of more going on beneath the surface. Something I liked a lot about book 2 was Beru has a contralateral head wound that has blinded her in her left eye, and her left hand just kind of does things without her knowledge. And so it seems like Beru has kind of been split into two people, like that old seizure treatment. There's a very interesting video, it's only like 5 minutes long, by CGP Grey that you should watch, and it's called You Are Too. It's kind of a like existentially freaky video, realizing that half your brain might just be a mute prisoner within your own skull. But it just kind of explains a little bit about what's going on with Beru in book 2.
Normal brains, this doesn't matter because each half communicates across the wire with the other. But split brains can't, and thus you can show just the right brain a word, ask the person, what did you see, and you'll hear
nothing.
Because left-speaking brain saw nothing. Meanwhile, right brain will use its hand to pick the object out of a pile hidden from left brain. This is deeply creepy. Ask why are you holding the object, and speaking left brain will make up a plausible sounding but totally wrong reason.
I always wanted to learn how to solve one of these.
Left brain isn't lying, it's just doing what brains do. These experiments on split brain patients are deeply unsettling because they really point in the direction of a mute, separate intelligence, something living in the skull.
And so something I seriously absolutely loved about book 3 is Beru was hiding things from herself because she couldn't trust herself. And so anything she wanted to keep hidden, she pushed to the other side of her mind and basically came up with new rationalizations for why she was doing it. She didn't even know her own plan, which I understand how that might seem frustrating, just hearing that, but I personally really absolutely loved it. Something I loved, but it terrified me, about book 3 is the Cancrioth. My 3 biggest fears are immortality, sharks, and like protuberances, growths, tumors, anything growing out of a person's body. And book 3 had all of that because the Cancrioth are a cancer-worshipping cult that have spent the last 2,000 years breeding different strains of cancer to grow in different body parts. And then after someone dies of their cancer, or right when they're dying, that cancer is cut out of them and transplanted into a new person. And that way the soul of everyone who's ever had it is preserved, is maintained within this tumor. And so they're an immortal cancer cult, and they have a killer cancer whale that acts like a shark. So basically my 3 biggest fears right there, all in a neat little bow in this book. Like Seth Dickinson reached into my mind and was like, what will terrify Matthew the most? But the Cancrioth were a super interesting aspect of book 3. Beru, after searching for them for so long in the 2nd book, she ends up spending quite a bit of time with them in the 3rd book. And we get to learn a little bit about their motivations, about how they came to be, about what they are currently with their immortality, all of that. So learning about the Cancrioth was very interesting. Learning more about the Mabeau was also super interesting. I absolutely love the concept of the Mabeau. Not of the Mabeau, but of Trim. So the Oriati Mabeau is a kind of African-inspired continent on the southern part of the Ashen Sea, which is the circular ocean. And so in the entire south, there is 3 different Mabeaus, but they're kind of all interwoven. But the people there, they believe in a concept called Trim, which I wish I had a definition of it for you. Maybe I'll insert one if I can find one after this. The idea of Trim is basically just like right actions, like doing good deeds, but you have to consider that as a person, you are just one intersection of threads in a giant net of all of humanity. And these threads are the relationships that you have with every single person in your life. And so all you need to really do is nurture the threads attaching to you. And if everybody does that, the entire world's connected essentially, because everyone's connected to at least one person. So if everybody just tries to do right by the people around them, the world just becomes a much better, much safer, much happier place. And while this is put to the test throughout their 2,000-year history, I just really like it as a concept. The Falcresti think of it as trite bullshit, which I can kind of also get because I really hate idealism. But I just found it a really, really charming idea, and I really liked reading about it and about their entire kind of civilization and their worldview. Because the Mabeau were actually the most powerful people in Beru's world for quite a while. Even 2,000 years ago, they were like the only people pursuing the scientific method. And they were at the forefront of basically every scientific, technological kind of invention that came about. And they were the people who educated the rest of the world. And so just kind of learning more about them, super interesting. If you can't tell, I have literally nothing bad about to say this book, except for like one tiny little misconception that I had going into it. I guess I'll just get to that now. My misconception was I thought that this was a trilogy. So as I was approaching the end of the book, I was getting like stressed or nervous. I was like, how the hell is Dickinson going to stick the landing of this entire beautiful, magnificent series in so few pages? And only after finishing the book did I realize that it is in fact going to be a quartet. So I am glad to hear that, because the very final chapter of the Tyrant Cormorant was very, very interesting, and I'm incredibly curious. The way the book ended, it honestly could have just been a trilogy with more of an open-ended ending. And then I thought that the final chapter might just be set up for another series written in the same world. But no, it turns out that it is the setting, or might be the setting, for the fourth book. So that is super exciting to me. But more praise. The characterization was just even more magnificent than it was in book 2. In book 1, the characterization, it was pretty solid, but there were some weak points. But you can like really, really, really distinctly hear the voice of every single different character within book 2, and especially within book 3. Exe Yawa, as it's pronounced in the audiobook. I don't know how you pronounce it. But Exe Yawa and her relationship with Beru was very interesting. And then seeing both of their relationships with their masters, Hesychast and Farrier, was also interesting. Learning more about the Cryptarchs was really cool. Shaolun and the diver. Shaolun, the diver whose name I can't remember, and the clarified Isand. They're kind of three different relationships with Beru was very interesting, since, as I mentioned before, Beru is a queer character. They all interacted so differently, and I actually really, really enjoyed that aspect of the book, because Beru has basically no experience with relationships of any kind. She's held herself so separate for such a long time that she like barely knows how to human. And so seeing her kind of navigate these 3 different women in book 2 and now in book 3, I actually really, really enjoyed that aspect of the book. I'm not usually one for romance, and I wouldn't particularly call these books romance heavy or romantic at all, really. But I did really enjoy seeing the kind of different relationships that Beru developed. Also, the book had some very, very good action. which I really liked. I can't really get into spoilers, but the stuff that happens at the island with the rebels was really interesting. The solution to the stuff that happened in the island was explosive. And everything that happened within the King Creoth ship, it was all great. I really can't fault this book in any way whatsoever. Hopefully this is the final time I record this video, because I recorded it, I think, 3 times before. Back when I first read it, an arc of it in like June. Then I recorded another one slightly after. Then I recorded one maybe like 2 weeks ago. And now I think this is the take that I'm going to use, hopefully. But yeah, this has been my review of The Tyrant through Cormorant by Seth Dickinson. I absolutely loved it. It's hands down my favorite book of the year. I highly, honestly doubt that Rhythm of War is even going to top it. Although that's the only one that's like a real contender. But I feel like I've been reading so many good books recently. This year, really, but especially recently. Like I mentioned in my last video, I read Velocity Weapon, Chaos Vector, The Black Song, The Demon in White, Ashes of the Sun. All 5 of those books in a row were 5 stars. Now I'm currently reading Marina by Carlos Ruiz Zafón, author of Shadow of the Wind, Cemetery of Forgotten Books, and I'm also reading Harrow the Ninth, which I just watched a video by Beautifully Bookish Bethany, I think is her name, and it was about how the first half of Harrow the Ninth is incredibly disorienting, and I'm actually very, very glad that she mentioned that, because I wasn't particularly enjoying like the first 3 or 4 chapters that I've read so far. But knowing that it's disorienting and then it gets cleared up at the halfway point for a very interesting reveal, that gives me some faith. So if you also happen to be picking up Harrow the Ninth anytime soon, I just figured I'd mention that so that you know, because Bethany mentioning that really helped me out. But anyway, that is all I have for you guys today. I hope you enjoyed the review. It was kind of all over the place, but I just really wanted to gush about this book. I really, really loved it. It was a 5-star book, my favorite book of the year. I really, really, really encourage you to pick this up soon. Have a good one. Bye.